We ready, Ms. Williams? Okay. Good evening. The Jackson Public Schools Board meeting is now called to order. Board members, we have 6 members present. We have 4 members in the boardroom, and we have Mrs. Thompson and Mr. McGuffey on the phone. Therefore, we have a quorum. We've all had an opportunity to review the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt as presented?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Dr. Harrison has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. We also have had an opportunity to review the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the August 20, 2024 regular board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Figurs has moved. Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Sivak. Good evening, board members, to our team members, our community members who are here with us. We'll begin with a video highlights reel from our instructional television team.
Yes, I am Jackson, born and raised.
A 2020 Murrah High School graduate who went to Yale University returns home, where he now teaches English at Murrah.
The English department here has been very helpful with lots of resources, and JPS in general has given us lots of professional development and training. So much guidance, really prepared to, plan out my classroom and make changes. A lot of the concerns that I had as a student are sort of fresh on my mind now, but from a teacher's perspective. So I'm trying my best to address those as I can moving forward.
A wonderful example of giving back to the community and inspiring the next generation of scholars.
These are kids fresh out of middle school, and so it's really exciting to see just how very excited they are about being in high school, ready to come to the classroom. So I think it is a little bit different than I remember, but it's refreshing.
Do what we do best, play football.
And plenty of enthusiasm and high expectations as high school football kicks off.
Let's take an opportunity to celebrate the sportsmanship, dedication, and school pride that makes Jackson Public Schools a special place.
Coaches and players are eager to get the new season underway and showcase their skills on the field.
You want to create an environment where you hope you'll be in the top 4, maybe be in the top 2 sometimes, host a playoff game, win a playoff game. Just making sure when it's time for district play to start that you're rolling and your guys are ready to go.
And for over a year, renovations have been underway at Bailey APAC.
All the plumbing throughout the building is new, updated LED lighting throughout. We're getting all new ductwork for the new HVAC piping. Every classroom will get painted and the floors refinished. Each one of our student restrooms are being renovated. The new choir room. This classroom will be our new art classroom, new sinks, new millwork and countertops, a set of girls and boys restrooms that have been added. In this ground floor, we have 5 classrooms that will accommodate the students from Wales. These rooms are all new. All of these offices accommodate our 4th and 5th grade administrative staff, the cafeteria, all new ductwork and piping. Black piping that you see is all new sprinkler piping. It's previously used as just a storage area. It will become the new band hall for our 6th through 8th graders. This is the kitchen at Bailey. We're making extensive plumbing renovations on the electrical. Our PE classrooms for girls and boys. Here in the gym, the ceilings have been painted. We've received new lighting. We received air conditioning in the gym. In the library at Bailey, new HVAC ductwork. The ceilings restored. The floors will be refinished.
We anticipate the completion of renovations in the spring of 2025, and we look forward to our Bailey Middle and Wells APAC scholars moving into their upgraded facility by fall 2025.
Please visit our website at jackson.k12.ms.us. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, Comcast, channels 18 and 19, and YouTube at youtube.com/JPSITV.
Thank you, team member. I appreciate those highlights, and it's always great to see the forward progress on the many facilities projects that we're working through here in Jackson Public Schools. Board members, as you are aware, as you'll recall, last month you approved a $13 million increased investment in our JPS team members. On August the 30th, team members received their first check with the pay increase. And so I want to thank Mr. Burke, our CFO, COO, and his team for all of their hard work in helping us to implement those increases. This was no small feat, as pay scales were, they required some revisions, significant revisions, and several of the roles across the district had to be repositioned on our various pay scales. So there were lots of moving pieces and lots of checking and rechecking and checking again to make sure that individuals did receive at least a $2, our classified folks, at least a $2 an hour increase to their pay. And so we're excited to have launched that and to be well on our way to making our district more competitive for our scholars, for our team members.
Yeah.
I do want to highlight that while it's just good to pay people and increase pay and strive to be more competitive with our compensation, this move also helps us to live into three of our commitments in our strategic plan. One, around talented individuals and teams. To attract and retain talented folks, we've got to ensure that they're fairly compensated. Two, commitment number 3, which is JPS Joy. People who feel valued and see some evidence of their value in the workplace tend to experience more joy. And I think that's probably true for any one of us or all of us. And then lastly, organizational effectiveness. We're seeking to maintain and to ensure consistent staffing across the district so that the really hard work that we're seeking to do and the things that we're seeking to achieve, we have a greater chance of achieving those with a complete staffing. So I'm thrilled that JPS was able to budget for those pay increases, and obviously there were some tough decisions that led up to that, and I do look forward to future increased investments in our talented team members. So again, I want to thank you, Mr. Burke, and your team. If you don't mind, let's give them a round of applause for all of that. Board members, believe it or not, we've already completed our first month of school. Yes, indeed. As we start the month of September, I want to encourage our parents and scholars to do their very best to ensure daily attendance at school. There are 180 days in the school year, and if a scholar misses just 18 days, that's 10% of the school year, and they're considered chronically absent. This could put the scholar at risk of falling behind academically. It makes it even harder for them to build the strong, positive relationships that we know are so critical when it comes to achieving at high levels. And it makes it less likely for them to graduate from high school. There's just strong evidence that poor attendance will often lead to struggles at completing high school graduation. And so, however, with consistent and timely attendance, our scholars are better positioned for success. Every excused or unexcused absence, and that includes suspensions and illnesses, all of them represent missed opportunities for learning. And so we want to be mindful of that. That's why JPS has joined the Every School Day Counts Attend to Achieve campaign. This initiative is designed to underscore the benefits of regular school attendance and to highlight strategies to prevent our scholars from being chronically absent, and of course, dealing with those challenges that I've outlined. For more facts about chronic absenteeism or more information about it, we invite folks to visit our website at www.jackson.k12.ms.us. That's for more information about that Every School Day Counts, Attend to Achieve, or any other information about our school district. And with that, Dr. Sivak, I turn the meeting back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Green. I can't believe it's already been a month, but it makes sense. All right.
Teacher.
All right. All right. Well, board members, we do have public comments tonight. So before we move on to public comments, I'll just remind everyone that community members who would like to make public comments should email their request to Ms. Rosalind Williams at roswilliams@jackson.k12.ms.us. no later than 4 p.m. the day of the meeting, or appear in person in the boardroom no later than 5:15 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Before we begin our public comments, I'll just share a few guidelines. We will have 3 minutes for comments. Attorney Turner will keep the minutes. The board believes the public comments are very important. We will listen and consider all comments, but we will not respond at this time. We would like to ask that if you have an issue with leadership at a particular school, to start there, or district administration, and if those issues persist, we encourage you to take those routes as well. Also, last but not least, all board members can be reached at our email addresses on the JPS website. So with that, Attorney Turner.
Board members, the first person to sign up to address you this evening is Okola Rashid. The subject of her comment is to ask the board to consider waiting for another very important community-based project out for use of the repurposing of Chastain.
May I pass this out? Is that possible?
Yes. I'll take them over here now.
Oh.
With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful Redeemer, I greet you in the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Okola Rashid, and I am the co-founder and president emerita of the International Museum of Muslim Cultures. I know many of you. I've been before you. We've done many of projects together. Today, this was unexpected. I really didn't intend to be here, but I did learn that you're going to be considering, I believe, today a proposal for the repurposing of Chastain School. And so I just wanted us with the International Museum of Muslim Cultures and our partners, we in March of 2022, the mayor, with the mayor's lead and the unanimous approval of the City Council of Jackson, they voted to approve a resolution for the museum to actually lead the efforts of a City of Jackson Beloved Community project. And we went right away and got funding to do that project from the Kellogg Foundation. We got $500,000 that we had to really work in the community. The Beloved Community Project is what we call a unique prophetic-based social justice model that actually builds dynamic, interfaith, and broad-based community partnerships that are inter-organization and intergeneration to heal, we say, the soul of America, but we need to start where we are in Mississippi and within the city of Jackson. So what you are looking at really is a snapshot of the completion of a 2-year community engagement project that we've undergone in Ward 2. We started in Ward 2. We chose to start in Ward 2, engaging the community in what we call participatory action research, which you as educators know about that. We engaged more than 400 and close to 420 community residents around what they wanted in their community to really improve the quality of life of that community. So I just want to touch on a few things, and then after how many minutes?
You're just about, you need to, about 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Okay, well, what you have in your hand is, as I said, the completion of that project, and we had 11 various different sectors of the community that we looked at, but the community chose these 5 sectors that you see in the document that you're holding as being the priority social issues that the community needs in order to improve itself. So there's healthcare, there's arts and culture, visionary leadership and education, entrepreneurship. We say, instead of criminal justice, we're saying restorative justice.
Thank you, Dr.
Your time is up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so my project manager will come up and talk a little bit more about the project.
Is this the other public comment? Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Am I
I'm
right to
happy
assume you're Ms. Sharif?
I'm Ms. Sharif, yes. Ms. Najla Sharif Salahuddin. I am the project manager for the Beloved Community Project. I'm honored to be here with you all this evening. So I've had the great pleasure to work on the ground with the community for the last 2 years with this project. And a special thing when we were going door to door to over 400 homes, that was unanimous from all the homes. Like one of the comments, we did a 40-question survey that was actually composed by community stakeholders, community members, some of our partner organizations, PAI, One Voice, Tougaloo College, Alluvio Collective. We all came together to create a 40-question survey. And I was actually on the ground going to the homes, and one of the things that came back from almost every home was that the greatest asset in Jackson is its people. And they were very hopeful that even though, we have the statistics that we do in Jackson, that if its people could get together, which Sister Okolo mentioned, the participatory action research design is based on the community being a part of creating the solutions that it needs for itself. So the people were hopeful that if we could do that, then we could create something that would transform the soul of Jackson and Mississippi overall. So we, as she said, we're starting in Ward 2, but eventually the plan is, once the plan is implemented, that it would be, once it is successful, it would be implemented in every ward in Jackson. So what makes this project special, it was inspired by Martin Luther King, who said that one day Mississippi would have an affinity for the top. And we believe that this project is actually a catalyst to do that. It would create more businesses in Jackson. It would create, as she said, so we want to have a hub. That's what the purpose for us trying to secure a building. So when we were originally looking at the list, Chastain wasn't on there initially. We didn't see it. And so by the time that we did, the window had already closed for the first proposals to be in. So we just would like to have the opportunity, because we have such a dynamic and amazing project that would serve the community overall, not just a selected few. We would just like to request that decision to vote on just the only one proposal that was submitted, that it be delayed in order for the next window, which would end September 17th or 18th, to allow for other proposals to be reviewed. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sharif. Okay, board members. Next, we will move on to our agenda. We have our information-only items, and the first item will be our grants department update. Mr. David Schomer, our grant manager, will provide this update.
All right, good evening, Dr. Green, President CVAC, and members of the board. This evening I'll be providing a grants department update. Due to time constraints, I'll be highlighting just a few of the many grants we've been awarded. Of course, we have our vision. We prepare scholars to achieve globally, to contribute locally, and to be fulfilled individually. Our mission, we develop scholars through world-class learning experiences to attain an exceptional knowledge base, critical and relevant skill sets, and the necessary dispositions for great success. The Grant Management Office supports the following strategic commitments and core values. Commitment 1, innovative teaching and learning. Commitment 3, JPS Joy. Commitment 4, organizational effectiveness. Core values are equity, excellence, growth mindset, relationships, relevance, and a positive and respectful culture. Reestablished in January 2022, the JPS Grant Management Office provides guidance and assistance to district teachers, staff members, departments, and schools in seeking funding opportunities to support identified strategic initiatives of the district. The office is currently managing 20 academic and operational foundation, state, and federal grants valued at over $24 million. We're going to talk a little bit about the academic grants that are currently in place. We have our community school strategy. There are multiple grants supporting that. The total investment is approximately $1.7 million. We have 2 major mental health grants currently underway. The total investment there is just under $5 million. Both of those were federal grants. We have, of course, our literacy grant, the RISE Literacy Grant that's been underway. This is year 3. This past school year was year 3 of a 5-year grant. Total investment $3.75 million. Under the category of college and career readiness, we have our Accelerate Mississippi Career Coach Service Grant valued at just under $1 million. For the arts, we also have the Save the Music grant, which is basically equipment and programming provided. Total value of the contribution is just over $400,000. Supporting our Early Learning Collaborative, you all know we had that over $9 million grant. Well, I just understood that on August 15th, MDE has approved an additional $16 million plus for our pre-K collaborative. Total investment over $25 million. With regard to operational grants, facilities, the MDE infrastructure loan was passed of $800,000 for emergency repairs specific to elevators as well as debt reduction. And of course, we received an extra $30,000 for a feasibility study for Jim Hill Auditorium from the Mississippi Arts Commission. Regarding safety and security, we received our COPS hiring grant, which is over $500,000. With regard to health and wellness, we have our BCSA grant, totaled at right around $800,000. And of course, y'all are well aware of our bus grants. We've received several. Total value is just under $10 million. Regarding workforce development, we have our Delta Regional Authority DRA grant that is in the process of being approved at approximately $137,000. As well as under the category of health and wellness, our MDE nurses grant that was just approved by the state on August 15th for $425,000. And then there's this mixed category of academic and operational grants with regard to advancement education. You don't want to leave out our foundations, the Hewlett Foundation and Kellogg. Hewlett's total investment since 2020 is a little over $2.5 million. And then Kellogg is a little bit over $5.5 million over the years. In summary, in recent years, JPS has received in academic grants over $39 million, over $12 million in operational grants, and over $8 million in academic operational grants, all supporting the implementation of the strategic plan. In conclusion, the JPS Grant Management Office will continue to seek funding opportunities and provide guidance and assistance to district personnel in support of the strategic plan. And while I'm thinking of it, Dr. Green, we were able to get our website up and running, so we now have a web page specific to grant management for the district. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schomer. Board members, any questions or comments?
It's good news.
Yeah, I'll just take a moment to just to say thank you. $24 million is not a small and insignificant number, and I know that there's a lot that goes into applying for the grants. There's a lot that goes into managing them and staying in compliance, and all of it's in service to our scholars. So thank you for your work on that front, and to all of those who support the effort when the dollars come in.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, board members. Next, we will move on to our information action items. The first request we have is the request to approve the Southern Education Foundation data sharing agreement. Mrs. Latoya Blackshear, our Director of Planning and Evaluation, will present this information.
Good evening, Board
evening.
President Dr. Sivak, board members, Superintendent Dr. Green, JPS family and friends. So the administration team recommends approval of the Southern Education Foundation data sharing agreement, and the board asked the following two questions. Are we currently using outcomes-based contracting in Jackson Public School? And if so, how are we using it? So in February, the board so graciously agreed to approve the agreement between Edmonton and Jackson Public School for the middle school math outcomes-based contract in response to RFP rebid 2023-15. With this contract, all middle schools participated in a 7-week high-impact math tutoring program focused on students who scored a level 3, moving them to proficiency and beyond and advanced. So currently, outcomes-based contracting, our Chief Financial Office is currently applying the outcomes-based contracting in our to providers involved in the district's construction projects. However, our district became aware of OBC in the education realm of sector by attending a convening with the Southern Education Foundation, so known as SEF. So SEF has been instrumental in establishing OBC practices in the state and district levels. By partnering with SEF and sharing the end of the year data, what we hope is to continue identifying effective strategies, pinpoint areas of improvement, and just thoroughly investigating or evaluating our return on our investments. So hoping to scale up a little bit more. Any questions?
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Blackshear. Board members, any questions or comments? Mrs. Blackshear, thank you for the additional information. So this agreement in particular is, we're hiring Southern Education Foundation to help us identify areas where outcomes-based contracting could be implemented within the curriculum supports or within could you just give a little bit more on exactly what we're buying here, purchasing?
So we're actually not purchasing, doesn't cost us anything. What we're doing is just partnering with them just to evaluate the results of the current outcomes-based contracting that we implemented already in the district. And by doing so, it allows us to just evaluate our practices, what worked, what didn't work, and how can we scale up with future projects that we're looking to go a little bit deep in.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Blackshear, it's also kind of solidifying our relationship with the with the foundation and this community around outcomes-based contracting.
That's correct.
It's a community of folks who are sharing information, and in some cases, we've been the ones sharing our experiences with this and learning from one another on how to best structure those contracts to ensure that we get the outcomes and to advance our thinking about how to structure these kinds of contracts, agreements.
Yeah.
I was going to say she has been my thought partner on it. I just definitely appreciate you, Ms. Turner.
As the contract guru.
And Attorney Turner whispered it's a data sharing agreement, and so that's the key thing here. But I will say, I know since we've been seated, there's been an interest in outcomes-based contracting going way back to the start of our term. So appreciate the efforts to put a finer point on what this looks like for us.
And we're excited about it. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackshear. All right, board members, this is an action item. Actually, we're going to take we're going to run A through G. We'll take that as a slate. H is the property one. We'll take that separate. So, all right. Next, we have the request to approve the renewal agreement between Northtown Pharmacy and the Jackson Public School District. Amanda Thomas, Mrs. Amanda Thomas, our Executive Director of Climate Wellness, will present this information.
Okay, great evening.
Great evening.
Board President Dr. Sivak, board members, Dr. Green, and community members. The administration recommends approval of a memorandum of agreement between Jackson Public Schools and Northtown Pharmacy. The purpose of this agreement is to continue the established and guided working relationship between Northtown Pharmacy and our district. Northtown Pharmacy will provide or continue to provide preventive health care services, including flu vaccinations, immunization maintenance, COVID testing, and screenings to scholars as well as staff members in our district. These services will be provided through a mobile pharmacy clinic. I would like to add that Northtown has provided hundreds of COVID, Tdap, flu vaccinations. They have also hosted our pre-K registration at his clinic, as well as participated in our wellness walk.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Board members, any questions or comments? I have one question. Do they get? I know they provide. Our scholars don't pay for this service. I don't believe we do either. How do they get compensated? Do they have a form of compensation?
So they do. So if scholars have insurance or their Medicaid, Medicare, then they are provided through that.
Okay, that's great. Northtown is an important business in our community. I just want to make sure that we're recognizing the service they provide and make sure they get compensated too. So that's great. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. All right, next we have the request to approve the renewal for Associated Adjusters, third-party claims administrator for Jackson Public Schools. Attorney Harris, our general counsel, will present this information.
Good evening, Board President Dr. Sivak, Board Members, Superintendent Dr. Green, JPS Community. The Office of the General Counsel is recommending that the Board of Trustees approve the renewal between Jackson Public School District and Associated Adjusters, our third-party claims adjuster. This renewal is seeking a rate increase of $10 per hour, and this is the first increase in probably the past 10 years.
Thank you, Attorney Harris. Board members, any questions or comments?
The past 10 years?
Yes, 10.
Thank you, Attorney Harris. All right, board members. Next, we will move on to the request to approve the agreement between Imagine Learning, formerly Ingenuity, and the Jackson Public School District for online and blended learning. Mrs. Lakeisha Marshall-Thomas, our Assistant Superintendent of the High School Network, will present this information.
All right. Great evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The administration is recommending board approval of the online and blended learning MOA between Imagine Ingenuity, formerly Ingenuity, and the Jackson Public School District to provide online and blended learning courses for credit recovery, first-time or initial coursework, professional development, and on-demand tutoring. As a component of this renewal, we will receive the unlimited access to over 300 concurrent, simultaneous users to their comprehensive software. In addition, we'll have initial credit, credit recovery, and honors courses available, in addition to our general electives and our CTE courses. One additional add-on this year was the on-demand tutoring that would provide students with direct access to a tutor in that particular subject. And that service is available 7 days a week at the click of a button. In addition, so just to share some data from last school year, so from August 1st, 2023 to July 31st, 2024, there were 3,482 unique students with over 10,000 enrollments. So of those scholars, 2,445 students actually had 6,000 valid enrollments. And we consider a valid enrollment as any student who've completed at least 10% of the progress. In addition to our credit recovery initial credit, we also provide blended learning. Blended learning is when a teacher decide to give particular assignments out of Ingenuity. They're not required to complete those, but that data is included in our data report. And so, Dr. Sivak, I think that was one of the questions about completion, and though that particular data is included. And so what we've asked Ingenuity is moving forward, if they would extract that data and give us clear data, initial credit, credit recovery data, separated from blended learning data where the students are not required to complete.
Okay, and are you planning on going through slides, or should I ask the questions?
Yeah, you can ask the questions.
Okay. So on that point, in instances, so there were data that were shared by school on average overall grades.
Correct.
And so, like, in one high school, you may see an average overall grade of 79%, and in another one, you'll see 21%. And so.
And that could be that school used a lot of blended learning courses to supplement a particular course, whether it's It could have been a physics course where they needed additional practice for students. So what they would do is pull assignments out of Edgenuity or assign those assignments in Edgenuity, and the students are not required to necessarily complete those, but it's calculated in the figure.
But that's the only thing that's looked at is the final grade. So if there's a bunch of incompletes that were never assigned.
That's correct.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Well, okay. You have any additional questions?
Are there any additional? I'll run through mine if board members don't have any. Okay, and so let's see. Some of these were just clarifying some of the language that was used in the materials that were shared. So one of the measures that is reported on is average pacing. And so I was wondering if you could just unpack what's being measured with that indicator.
So, for example, we would set targets where we were expecting students to be at least 10% complete. So, for example, if we stated a student started September 9th and we wanted them to be by a certain place by October, then that student would be considered off pace if they did not meet the 10% progress that was required. And in instances, for some courses, the teacher may not have even set targets. And so that student automatically will be flagged to be off target if no target was set.
Okay, so in many ways, we don't know.
No. And our students work so independently on in online coursework. And so we generally do a check-in at midterms and at the terms. And if those students are not meeting appropriate progress, then we push in to provide additional supports. But just to say, every 2 weeks you have to be by, at this particular point because they work, at different rates.
Mm-hmm.
We give them that leeway.
Okay. And then there's also, I noticed there was an ROI calculation, and it looked like the biggest bang for the buck was between 0, 9, 10 to 19. There was a big jump, and then it seemed to level off. And so there was a question around just, should we just be focusing on interventions that are between 0 and 19 hours? Or?
And so 0 to 9 hours are generally those credit recovery courses.
Okay.
Because we can generally assign the standards we want the students to recover, those students tend to complete credit recovery courses anywhere, from 9 hours of working on those, versus a student that may be completing an initial credit course, and it takes them up to 30 hours to complete.
Okay.
So when you see 0 to 9, that's generally our credit recovery courses and not initial credits.
That's helpful, too. And you see a big spike on that one. Okay. And so just overall, just to wrap it up, what's your overall sense of the value we're getting out of this for not just certainly for our scholars, but also as a tool that our teachers are able to leverage with them?
Yes, lots of value. Not only is it giving our students an opportunity to recover courses without having to complete a full course if I'm missing just a few standards. It allows me to go back and work on those skills. Now, we're very selective about students we actually put in credit recovery. If we feel that the student would be better off retaking the entire course, then we make those recommendations to families as well. But in addition to having additional resources for teachers, their guided notes, their videos, that are aligned to our standards, Edgenuity is approved by the Mississippi Department of Education, so all the courses have been vetted, and so those align directly with our college and career readiness standards. And so any additional practice that our students are getting are directly aligned to the standards. And a lot of times what we see, students that can actually go through and get additional practice even prior to going into a classroom or after a subject or content has been taught, those students fare pretty well.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Marshall-Thomas. All right, board members. Next, we will move on to item E, the request to approve the terms of service with Quaver Music. Dr. Delane Lesh, our Director of Federal Programs, will present this information.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The administration recommends approving Quaver Ed terms and services and their software. Quaver Music is an online standards-based music program for students in pre-K through through 8th grade. The curriculum is 100% aligned with the Mississippi College and Career Readiness and Arts Learning Standards for music, and it's also aligned with the National Core Arts Standards. The platform provides interactive digital resources for teachers and students that are accompanied by print resources, including worksheets, assessments, sheet music, and lesson plans.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lesh. Board members, are there any questions, comments?
I'm just always so glad to hear that we've got music in our schools.
Yes, and the students love it because it's an interactive program as well.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Next, board members, we will move on to the request to approve an award and partial fulfillment of RFP 2024-17 to Great Minds. Dr. Kimberly Smith, our Executive Director of the Office of Teaching and Learning, will present this information.
Great evening. The administration is recommending for approval the renewal between Great Minds and JPS to continue providing high-quality ELA instruction for students in grades K through 5.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Board members, are there any questions? All right, thank you. Board members, next we have the request to approve the cancellation and release of the agreement between Jackson Public Schools, the lessor, and Moran Campus Product, the lessee. Mr. Wilton Chuck Jackson, our Executive Director of Assets and Property, will present this information.
Good evening, Dr. Sivak, board members, Dr. Green, members of Jackson Public School, family, and friends. The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve the request to cancel and release the 16-section property between Jackson Public School District, LESAR, and Moran Campus Product, Incorporated, LEC.
Thank you. Any questions, board members, comments? Thank you. All right, board members, we've heard information, had the opportunity to ask questions on items A through G, information action items. Is there a motion to approve the items A through G?
I so move.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Mr. Figgis has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item H, the RFP for proposals for surplus school properties. Dr. Eric Green, our superintendent, will present this information. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Sivak. The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approves the recommendations of the Evaluation Subcommittee of the Facilities Repurposing Advisory Committee to accept the proposed bids for Wingfield High School and Chastain Middle School, and to reject the proposed bid for Raines Elementary School. In an effort to thoughtfully repurpose available properties for the good of the community and the district, the Jackson Public School District issued a request for proposals, RFP, to solicit interest from individuals or entities for those properties. The district received 3 proposals by the first of the rolling deadlines, the first being on July the 17th of 2024 at noon, in response to the RFP. The Evaluation Subcommittee determined that the proposals for Wingfield High School and Chastain Middle School met the required standards as identified in the evaluation guidance, while the Raines Elementary School proposal did not. As with other bid processes, the administration recommends that the board accept the Wingfield High School and Chastain Middle School bids at this time and allow us to move forward with contracting with those 2 entities. The final contract for those properties would then be brought back to the board and presented for final consideration. By rejecting the Raines Elementary School proposal, the property would remain available for other interested parties to submit proposals through the RFP process as outlined. Jackson Public Schools, with the authority provided under Mississippi Code 1972, sections 377471 through 377487, released a comprehensive RFP process to provide interested parties with a direct avenue to submit competitive proposals. This process allows the Board of Trustees to review and identify the most feasible proposals that best align with the district's and the community's needs and aspirations. The evaluation subcommittee reviewed each of the proposals to ensure that it met the RFP criteria guidelines and the needs of the surrounding community and Jackson Public School District. In consultation with our commercial real estate broker, the evaluation subcommittee considered the proposed terms of each bid as a component of the total review process, and those terms to include both the use of the property and, or the proposed use for the property and the proposed remuneration or cost. I will pause there and see if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Board members, questions, comments?
I have a question. This is Cynthia Thompson.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have a question. If I have read everything and understand that these were the only three that were proposed, but based on some of the information that were presented at the public comment at the top of the hour, is it possible to hear more from the entities that were presented and hold off on the Chastain property before moving forward?
Yes, ma'am. I think I understand the question. So at the end of the day, the board has the right to reject the proposals that have been presented to you. You have that right. But I'd strongly urge that you not do that. We were asked to create a system by which our properties could be thoughtfully considered and repurposed. We've done that. We've communicated broadly the process. There's a place on our website to go and to find additional information, people to call, opportunities to visit the property should folks be interested in that. There are several people who are in queue, people and organizations that are in queue now and considering properties and proposals that they might make. Organizations and individuals in varied positions in terms of wherewithal to pay or to lift up a particular body of work in those properties. And so what I'd submit to you is that you are likely always going to have a situation where someone comes after the deadline and says, for whatever reason, I would like to have submitted a proposal within that window and for that same property. I am confident that this is not the last time you'll be presented with this. And while it's unfortunate that we don't have all of the interested parties at once, because we've got 27 or so properties available to us, we were confident, we knew that we weren't likely to get all of the proposals from all of the interested parties in the first round, which is why we have the rolling deadlines. But of course, that means that a property that a party might be interested in could be bid on before they get to it if they don't bid in the first round. All of that to say, I am confident that you'll run into the same situation again, and you can't continue to disallow proposals because someone comes and says they intend to submit something for that same property. I would encourage us all to recall that there are 27, I believe that number is right, 27 or so properties that are available, and we are actively seeking interested parties for all of them. And then there are likely to be more over time as we rethink the use of central offices that could down the road come available for folks. So I would strongly urge you to stick to the proposal process that we've outlined, that we've articulated, that we've communicated, and that we've shared with this board previously.
Dr. Green, I have two questions. The first, so the two proposals that are before us are both church-based proposals, and churches are pastor-driven. Have we looked at all at any of the risk associated with succession, or if these churches, which are led by unquestionable leaders, if they were to no longer be in those posts, would that pose a risk to the success of these two projects?
We haven't looked at it from that standpoint. Should this leader no longer be the leader or the pastor at the church, but we have looked at it from the standpoint of the stability of the church families themselves, the church organizations themselves, as well as their prior history in developing properties or lifting up and launching projects such as these. And in both these cases, we have church families that have fairly long histories, considerable history in doing this very thing. Acquiring properties, redeveloping, remodeling properties, launching projects and programs that go beyond the worship services themselves. And so, again, we haven't looked specifically in the way that you framed it, but more from the stability of the overall organization.
Yes, Attorney Turner.
I'm sorry, and as well as the financial stability of the organizations. That was a part of the review process. I should have mentioned that. Sorry about that.
So the one thing I would just add is if you have a concern about that, then what you could do is one of the steps that you have to do in finalizing each of the transactions is you will describe what the proposed use of the project is that this organization intends to make. And so while I wouldn't advise that you make that contingent upon a certain individual being in place, what you can look at is what did they tell you the project was going to look at in terms of, the number of folks it was going to serve, the types of services that it was going to offer. And if those are, or whichever of those components of the proposed use you find to be essential to the overall project itself, you could build that in so that what happens is that there has to be a reverter clause. And I'm going to make a comment to y'all later, but with regard to the reverter clause, what it essentially says is if the organization ceases to use the property for the reason that the board granted the property to the organization, then it would revert back. The school board would make a finding that you're no longer using the property for the purpose that we granted it to you, and if and when that becomes the case, the property has to revert back to the school district. So I would say you could address a concern that you have by being more descriptive or specific of the actual components of the proposed use that you consider to be essential. So, like I said, serving a certain number of people, offering certain services, types of collaboration, but you could build all of that in to the approval document so that if that didn't happen, then you'd be able to go back and either take it back or have some discussions of what they're going to do with it.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And that actually is a great segue to the other question I have. So one of the proposals is for the Redeemer Church to purchase Chastain. And there are a number of community development projects associated with that. There's the movement of the Hinds County Library, which would go in there, the old Tisdale branch, creating a library in that part of the city. There's some nonprofit organization that works to create opportunities for baseball among youth, particularly black youth, youth who are black. And so But there's also a proposal to move their school into that space. And in the bid materials, it mentioned that the current enrollment is 140 students and that they would like to expand to 150 students. The other thing that the bid mentioned is that the students at Redeemer don't pay tuition or they pay a nominal amount. And so one question, Dr. Green, that I would ask you is if the Redeemer Chastain proposal were to be approved, would you be open to going back and speaking with the leadership at Redeemer around limiting the enrollment to the current size? And the reason I bring this up is if we allow for the expansion, if we engage in a project that allows this school, which is effectively a public school with a private brand, it has a mission that can be sold, and our students will potentially be the students who are most likely to attend. That's $1.5 to $2 million a year. Based on my math, and Mr. Burke can correct me, I'm basing that on $16,000 a student times 110 students. And those students are coming from, so and this project will likely happen anyways, right? So that's the other piece that I'm aware of. But I guess I'm just, in good faith, would you be open to having that conversation, recognizing it's a two-step process? There's the bid process, and the board still has to approve a contract.
Would we be willing to go back and have a conversation about that? Absolutely. I think it's worth. I think it'd be important for all of us to understand, implications of that for sure on our side. What might, if the additional scholars were to come from current Jackson and JPS enrolled scholars, then what the financial implication of that would be. I think it's also important for us to understand for their purposes, in order to make their program effective, that we all have a stake in. While we'd be selling the property, it's not just an outright sale. There's a sale with a mission-driven program, and all of that is a part of the package that has been presented to us. And so what I can't say here is that not to expand their program would in some way materially impact their ability to run their program, that we essentially would be approving if the board accepted their proposal. So all that to say, I think it's absolutely worth the conversation. We absolutely need to know what we'd be getting into, and be prepared for to deal with whatever their response is. If it's, hey, we actually need blah, 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 blah in order to do this, show us this in writing, show us this in the numbers, et cetera, and then we come back to the board with this is what we learned and this is where we are. And so is this amenable to us, board, or not? Long way to respond, but yes, I think it's absolutely a conversation we're willing to have. I just don't know, sitting here, I don't know, based on what we find from that, what we'd be willing to do with it.
Understood.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's important to lift it up here, as I know that's a concern across the board. For what's undoubtedly what I think is a strong proposal. Not only does it have these other community development benefits, it's clear that Redeemer has a commitment to Jackson Public Schools. I mean, the people at the church are involved in many of them, whether, Boyd, Powell, Merritt, there's a number of them that are listed. And so I think that's also something that separates them. And let's also be clear that it's not a charter school. So that's, I think, one thing that as we look at the types of proposals that come forward, I think when we put restrictions on properties, I think this board would be in agreement that we would want to have assurances that these buildings would not be used for charter schools, and that would be codified in the legal, in the legal terms in the document.
Yes, sir. And to be clear, because I didn't share this earlier, as a part of the of orientation to serving on the Facilities Advisory Repurposing Committee or the subcommittee for evaluation, we've been very clear, not speaking on behalf of the board, but sharing previous board positions with regard to charter and expanding or engaging with charter school organizations around our facilities. And so we've made that clear, and that's been a part of our considerations.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Board members, any comments before we vote?
That's good to know. I appreciate your going a little bit more in depth with that description.
Again, I've been very careful not to speak for the board. The board gets the ultimate decision, and we've had some experiences around that matter, and so wanted to make sure that folks knew that.
This is Mitch. I've got a quick question that I think would pertain to, frankly, both of the proposals that are being suggested for approval, but it would also somewhat apply as we move forward, helping me to understand what it is or is not, what it is that we're committing to and what we're not committing to. Am I correct that none of the proposals that are being advanced for our approval would involve JPS footing any of the bill for repairs to those buildings? That was kind of part of the motive, was part of the motive for some of the optimization plan, not the full motive, not even line 1 or 2, frankly, but part of it was cost avoidance on future construction. We're not committed to having any sort of partnership on costs to get those buildings up to whatever the purchasing parties need them to be.
That's correct. That's correct. And you know, relatedly, as we consider the cash offers for the sale of the properties to the two, at least the two entities, the other piece for us to consider is are the carrying costs that we have for each of those properties each year. That should also be a consideration going forward.
One thing that this is not entirely on all fours with us approving this, but it is something that I'm mindful of as we, especially if we're looking at cash offers on properties. I want to put the thought out there that something that was talked about a lot with the bond, especially if schools were closed, when bond dollars were originally dedicated to a school, there was a concerted effort to, it may not have been dollar for dollar, but to try to allow those funds to benefit those kids. And I'm mindful of that here as well, where you've got, take Wingfield High School, for example, you know, to the extent it's possible, it just has kind of been weighing on me that those dollars should benefit those kids. So again, that's not sort of tethered. That's just one person's opinion. But I did want to kind of share it as we're looking at these two bids in particular, and there's money kind of coming in, to think about the ways in which we allocate it and the ways in which it sort of follows around our scholars.
Yes, sir.
There's no question there. It's just a suggestion.
No, understood. At the risk of belaboring the discussion, your comment did kind of call back for me this a lot of conversation amongst the larger committee and the evaluation subcommittee around price. And this board, we, the administration, along with the board, have had quite a bit of discussion over the last couple of years around the value of properties, and that not solely being tied up in the cash offers or the cost or the price being at which the properties might be sold, and this larger community good also being a strong consideration. And so we have brokers who are working with us whose whole jobs, their job is to help us to see and to quantify and to benchmark our properties and the condition of our properties and the size of the lot on which those properties sit. Their job is to help us think about and to push us in thinking about the value, financial value of those. And alongside that, our committee has been grappling with the larger kind of community good that the properties could bring the city, the community, neighborhoods, et cetera. And so as we go through considering these first few proposals, and we've already got more in the queue for consideration in the next round, we're going to have to, all of us, we and board members, will all have to keep balancing and juggling this conversation around the value, quote unquote, of the property, what it's worth to us, also, of course, what it's worth to anyone who may buy it, as well as the proposed programming and community offerings, benefits that are being proposed there. And it's not an easy, direct, singular, straightforward conversation. And we'll likely have varying opinions as to what project may be better than another project, or what offer may be best versus another. All those things we'll have to grapple with because there's no singular answer. And if that were the case, then we'd simply put the properties on the market at a particular cost and fight for that cost. But our process includes this conversation around community good, and so there's been a lot of grappling around that, a lot of it. And so just for what it's worth, I want to offer that now and know that that'll likely continue to be, especially when we get to the place where within a round of consideration of proposals, there's more than one proposal for one facility. And we're now in a position where we're having to compare or consider this proposal versus this one, when the dollar amount likely will be different and the proposed programming will likely be different, and the entities offering, and on and on and on, all those things. It just makes for a good problem to have, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Attorney Turner, is there your things you wanted to share with the board?
Just one. I'd like to give you just a couple of thoughts on logistics. So I think the intent of the administration is to bring to you a contract document that would set out the terms. And so what's being proposed tonight is that you would essentially accept the best proposal from the RFP process. But logistically, what I think you need to get to finalize this transaction is you need a resolution and that final contract document, which I think ideally would be attached to it. And I think I've mentioned this before when we've talked about the process for the board being able to dispose of surplus property. You've essentially got the two alternatives. There's the one alternative where you put it out, seal bids for cash, and you just accept the best bid for cash, or you go through this alternative mechanism, which is what you are proposing to do. but the law that allows you to do that specifically says you have to, there has to be a resolution adopted by the board that's duly spread upon the minutes, and that resolution needs to include certain language. Number one, you have to actually declare it surplus, so that, you know, Chastain Middle School or, you know, whatever the other facility is, Wingfield High School is no longer needed and is not used in the operation of the schools. You have to explicitly state that. The second part of that resolution would be that you identify who the group of persons or the entity is that you want to convey the property to, and what the proposed use of it would be, and that use has to fall within the allowable uses that the statute sets out: religious, you know, youth, civic centers, community, that kind of thing. But you want to be sure you hit those. And then the third part of it would be the reverter section of it, because the law also specifically states that they have to maintain the property in a good state. You have to insure it, maintain it in a state of good repair. And then the second part of that is that if they no longer continue to use it for the purpose for which you provided it to them, that the property would revert back. So you have to include that in the resolution, and then you include that in the conveyance documents, the deed, that kind of thing. So I think the process that we followed so far is fine. I just kind of want to be sure that kind of everybody's on the same page, that they're not just bringing you a sales contract or something like that and some proposed conveyance documents. There does also need to be that resolution that makes those findings that the board would have, that sets out those components. And I think just kind of for ease, you would attach that document to the actual resolution saying, you know, we're doing the resolution, here's what we're doing, and then the conveyance will be a sale for this price, and you would have that contract document attached. So, I mean, I think that's the process that would follow what you're required to do under that method of disposition.
Does board members have any questions?
That made it a little.
Mike.
That made it a little foggy, Mr. President.
Exactly not what I wanted to accomplish.
I do appreciate lawyers, and you all know that. The challenge was lingering in my mind about this charter school bill of 2015 and surplus property, charter schools having the first right of refusal. How does that?
It only applies to the initial method. Before you go out and you're going to sell it for sealed bids for cash, you have to offer it to the charter schools. If you're going to follow the alternative method, you don't have to offer it first to the charter schools. So by going through this alternative method of conveyance, you didn't have to offer it to the charter schools first.
Which was a part of a piece of public policy maybe
That's
in
in the
2022.
statute. The statute, there's two sections of the Mississippi Code. One deals with the normal method, the sealed bids for cash, and in that legislation, in that statutory process, you'll find the language that you have to offer it to the charter schools first. There's then a separate section of statutes that they call the alternative method, and in that method, there's not the language that says you have to offer it to the charter schools first.
Okay. Makes sense.
Ms. Turner, real quick, I'm trying to make sure I understand sort of process-wise as well. So you're in agreement that approving what's being proposed to us tonight and an approval of the bid, which would permit then the administration to move to a contract negotiation phase, that's appropriate. You're just saying that we can't just get a contract back, stamp approved on the contract. We also have to take additional steps. Is that right?
Yes, and I guess to be explicit, what I would suggest that the minutes include, normally the law under that deals with public procurement would say that in a traditional bid sense, that once the board accepts a bid, there's kind of some case law on this, that the acceptance of the bid creates a binding obligation between the school district and the bidder. We don't want that, and so What happens is in our form RFP and bid documents, we include language in there. What the law says is unless you make it contingent upon something, that binding obligation is committed. So when we go out for a traditional bid,
Right.
all of our bid documents will say, even though we award you the bid, you don't have a binding obligation with the district until there is a final contract document executed. So assuming you all move forward tonight, I'm going to be sure that your minutes include, even though the board is accepting the bid of New Horizon and Redeemer Church, that it is not a binding obligation that's created. That's going to be created when they bring back that resolution with that contract document to you. That's just kind of what we do as our normal bid process.
Right.
So yes, so I think the
That
process
was my
they've
concern.
done-
That's
Yes.
okay. That was my concern, and that's what I wanted to make sure we were hitting. Is that we still have the opportunity to sort of enter into a negotiation phase and get to what would be a final binding contract.
Yes.
Okay, great.
For our part, and of course and that's not just for these two entities or the entities that may be accepted tonight, but even going forward, I want to make sure that we all understand, though, that the properties themselves are no longer in play or are not in play while that negotiation process is happening. Because that would be problematic for anyone who's submitted a proposal and for us, for others to submit and for us to be considering or holding them in queue or what have you. So does that comport with what you've shared as well? Okay. Just want to make sure.
I mean, that's up to the board, but yes, that's what I would contemplate that y'all would do.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. For at any point that a recommendation is made and the board accepts a proposal for one of the properties, at that point, the property is basically locked up through contract negotiation. And so there isn't an opportunity for more negotiation with other entities, et cetera. That's the process that we've contemplated, at least, and wanted to make sure that was consistent with what we're discussing here tonight and the clarity that Attorney Turner offered. Because if not, then we've gotten more proposals. I believe we've gotten more proposals for some of these properties. Well, we've got more interest, I should say. There's been more interest even stated here tonight, but there's been other interest stated since the deadline of July 17th. And so we just want to be clean in terms of what are we considering in this round, and if the board goes with it, great. If the board decides not to accept it, that property is now open again for consideration and additional proposals. We just want to be able to communicate as cleanly as possible to potential interested parties, one way or the other. Does that?
Sorry, I don't mean to keep beating this to a dead horse. Essentially, what we're saying is we would enter into an exclusivity period for negotiation. That's what I have in my head, or the term that generally gets used. I think what we're talking about is where we'd enter into an exclusive negotiation period where it would be solely limited to the entity with an approved bid. Is that fair? Is that what you're saying?
Not knowing all of the details of an exclusivity period, but yes, that. Exactly.
We might consider, just as a function, then either marking that on the website or pulling those while during that exclusivity period.
Yeah, we've discussed as a committee, there would be a can't remember what we said, if it was pending or contract pending or something, much like you would see on a sign of a property on the street. Something just to denote that it's wake up. Something just to denote for individuals that there's something pending.
I have a question. Who would be responsible for the resolution, drawing up the resolution? Would that be you, Attorney Turner?
If you ask me to, it's...
We would in consultation with.
All right. Just more clarity.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, board members, any additional questions, comments? All right, hearing none. Board members, I'm going to ask you to support this proposal that the district has brought before us. It's our first one. There's a process that's been set up. I think these are solid proposals, and this will not be the last time we vote on these. We actually have to vote on the resolution. And so, again, I think that given the strength of what's been put before us, the importance to send a signal that the process is strong, I'm going to ask for that support. So with that, I will make the motion to approve item H. Is there a second?
That's second.
Okay, it's been moved by Seevack, seconded by Hilliard. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Nay.
Nay.
The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, board members. All right, board members, next we will move on to the consent agenda items from finance. The board has previously reviewed all the consent agenda items for finance, and we've had an opportunity to ask the administration questions. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda finance?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Mr. Figurs has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 The motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda item general. The board has previously reviewed all the consent agenda items for the general and had an opportunity to ask administration questions. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda general?
So moved. Second.
Dr. Hairston has moved. Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next, we have our consent agenda items personnel. All the consent agenda items personnel have been reviewed by the board previously. We've had an opportunity to ask the administration questions. Are there any further questions? If not, board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda personnel?
Motion.
Second.
It's been moved by McGuffey, seconded by Figures. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Board members, we do have, I believe, an item for consideration in executive session. Is there a motion to close the meeting, consider executive session?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Figures, seconded by Ms. Hilliard. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.